We are going live. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield, and I'm here in Seattle, actually, but I'm participating in the International Symposium on Online Journalism, which is, of course, a huge issue these days because that's what everything is online. It's all about digital journalism and digital formats. And so the keynote speaker today was actually Catherine Viner, who is the editor-in-chief at The Guardian. And she's one of my favorite people to hear. She had a lot to say about what was going on in terms of paywalls. And that is something that really concerns me and a lot of people I've been talking to lately. I'm actually executive director for Democracy Watch News. So we were talking about this on our web, our podcast and press briefing just the other day. Paywalls, information that's available or unavailable that is in the public interest is always an issue when it comes to issues of freedom of the press. By the way, the International Symposium on Online Journalism has been taking place since Monday. It kicked off with the publisher and chairman of the New York Times. And so we also are hearing from a senior editor at the Washington Post and some other very high-level, top-notch people in their fields. However, there's also a lot of talk about independent journalism here, and there are a lot of people involved in this that are independent. Thanks definitely goes out to the Knight Foundation for making this possible, along with the University of Texas at Austin. And you can check out all of the events at isoj.org. And then the hashtag is ISOJ2021. And so, of course, all of this is happening online. And for those of us who have been working on these platforms for many years, for instance, when I was working with Pacifica Radio Network, we did the Free Speech Radio News broadcasts every day, 1 hour live program virtually. I mean, none of us worked in the same radio station. We were actually at different stations around the country, WBAI in New York City, KBCS where I was at, outside of Seattle and Bellevue, and then also KPFK, KPFA, and other stations around the country that are a part of the flagship fleet of the Pacifica Network. They worked together. So each one of us would take turns. I actually didn't do as much producing, but I did serve on the steering committee for that international group, and we worked with reporters around the world. So the idea of going online or using the telephone or teleconferencing or video conferencing to do your work is a totally natural experience for those of us who have been doing that for many years. I know for a lot of people, they're just learning how to use these platforms and this technology, but it's been a natural for those of us who are used to working that way. And Democracy Watch News does that every Thursday. We have a national and international press briefing, and we have staff all over the country. And then we have folks that also report for us, correspondents in continents far afield from the United States, talking about hopefully, issues that the rest of the media isn't talking much about, and especially the corporate media. Of course, that's easy to do because they pretty much only stare at their own nose, but we know that. And then, as far as international coverage of news, news coverage in the United States of international events is not very well done. Let's put it that way. There's not a big move on the part of the corporate press in the United States to keep people informed about what's happening in other countries around the world. So this is my opportunity here to report from the International Symposium on Online Journalism. And by the way, Democracy Watch News actually was honored as one of the top influencers in digital news media at one point. So we were proud of that. Of course, being an influencer is a great thing, but actually, feet on the ground and real reports is what it's all about. So you can go to democracywatchnews.org and check out the blog there and our mission statement. And then there's also the podcast, which is called Democracy Cast. And as I said, we try to cover a lot of issues that other media doesn't cover. Of course, a lot of issues having to do with democracy, which is our name. So we cover pro-democracy movements around the world. Um, I'm also an artist and a musician, and as you can see, so I'm here in the studio doing my thing as a creative artist as well as doing news journalism. But I think that people who are in journalism for the right reasons know how important it is to get information out to the public that is in the public interest, and that's basically the job of all of us. And then also to hopefully give a voice to people who don't normally have a voice in the corporate media and tell stories that aren't being told out there by the mainstream. So you can find us on Twitter as well. We have a quite extraordinary international news feed there. A lot of other news organizations follow us for that reason on Twitter. Twitter is the place, according to muckrack.com, where my portfolio is posted, and a lot of other journalists post their work, their professional portfolios. That website did the 2021 State of Journalism report recently, and of course found that more and more journalists are turning to Twitter. And the reason that is true is because stories break very quickly on Twitter. People are actually literally tweeting out messages as the story is breaking. You can also get quick links to live streams and then be there virtually yourself and actually watch what's happening all over the world. So it's a very interesting place to get breaking news. And some people never use it. They find no use for it. Other people use it all the time. It's like every other platform. We all have our styles and uses of these things or non-uses of them. But of course, you can also find us on Facebook, and you can also find me on Facebook and Twitter and all of that. Instagram, Mark Taylor-Canfield, and then this YouTube channel here. We have over 500 original videos. A lot of them are my guest appearances on the Jeff Santos Show, which is every week on the revolutionradionetwork.com. That's Jeff. He's in Boston. He's a good friend of mine and a true kind of cutting edge kind of journalist out there trying to push the envelope. And I think that a lot of the guests you'll hear on his program are more intelligent and more well-spoken and more well-informed than you'll hear in most mainstream media. So you can hear me there every Friday, usually at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. He's on the air on the West Coast from noon to 3 p.m. On the East Coast from 3 to 6 p.m. So drive time. Broadcasting out of Boston. So I'm in Seattle, but he's in Boston, and we have this bi-coastal situation going on here where we network with each other. And then he has guests like Harvey Kay, who's really a great iconoclastic historian. Melissa Tomlinson from Badass Teachers is one of my favorite guests on his show. She's just no nonsense. She is badass, all for education. And then Herb Boyd, who's one of my heroes. He's the editor for the Amsterdam News, which is actually in New York City because the Dutch used to own that place, so it was considered New Amsterdam. But he's a great author and journalist and editor. He wrote Black in Detroit, which is a phenomenal book. Amazing man, heart of gold. He's somebody you gotta get to know. Anyway, he's on Jeff's show every week, along with John Nichols from The Nation and a lot of other really great sort of cutting edge independent journalists and political people. So, but the International Symposium on Online Journalism is what I wanted to report about today. And it has been a very interesting series of sessions. And I think that as we went through the day yesterday and today, all of us are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with the platforms that we're using. We've actually had these interesting things like so-called virtual parties that took place on Shindig, and then there's also a room. There's the Wonder Room, which is on the Wonder platform, and those are just ways that journalists can get together and kind of virtually interact with each other, since we're not physically in the same place during this year's symposium. But as I said, today's keynote speaker was editor-in-chief of The Guardian, Catherine Viner, and one of the most inspiring talks I've heard recently about journalism, because she really did go into why the paywalls are so detrimental to what a lot of people are doing in terms of their own journalism, and then other people's the public's need for access to information. So, the theory is that you shouldn't have to go to a public library or the Library of Congress or something, to get this information. But we know that the Washington Post has a paywall, and that the Seattle Times has one now. So you get a certain number of articles, and then boom, you have to pay. So she talked about the Guardian's model and how they've been quite successful actually with their contribution model. She says it's not a donation model because we are not. Hey, am I getting audio here? I'm actually not seeing a signal here, so I'm wondering whether the mic is actually on. Let me check something. Excuse me. I actually do not see an audio signal. I should have one here because the microphone is plugged in. So I may have the settings wrong. That's part of what this is about, is trying to test this kind of a live report, especially in the middle of a conference like this. Let me see what I can figure out here. What I'm probably going to do is jump off really quick here and see if there's any audio, because otherwise I have no idea whether people can hear me. And as I tap the mic, let's see. It says the mic is on, but we'll see. This is what I would like to do. I'm going to hop off for just a second, go to my YouTube channel and see whether I can hear anything on that audio. It'll be part of the test. So I hope you all hang on for just a second because I'll be right back.